am live. Are you able to see it? Is it working? Huh? Yeah. Good evening and congratulations for all of you who have cleared the exam. Hearty congratulations from me and my team here. I can tell you that the results are still coming in for us because we have more than 1,000 people who have enrolled on our website, and I can easily tell you more than 100 have cleared by our conservative estimate. Now, this only includes people. This only includes people who have actually availed some service from Lex campus, say they bought some course or some material. So that's it's more than 100. And with regard to people who had enrolled for other courses, we really don't have the number, but it could be substantial. And this brings me back to one of the things that I had mentioned early on, that this could be a bumper year for patent agents. And I'd mentioned saying that there is a great market need, and the number of people who would clear this time would be substantial, and it has turned out to be that. We have seen a huge increase in the number of people who have cleared the exam, and we want the people who clear the exam to get to register themselves as patent agents as well. So the only thing that stands between them and the registration is the VIVA VOCE. So what we have done here, we want to give you few tips. It's not actually tips, it's about what you should be doing in the remaining days to prepare for the VIVA VOCE. And we would also want to tell you as to what is the approach that you should be taking here. Okay, so with regard to that, I would just introduce three things about a general preparation on VIVA VOCE. But before that, as some of you would know, I am not a great supporter or a fan of conducting VIVA VOCEs. If you have cleared the exam, that should be the test. And today there is no need for us to counter check whether it was the same person who took the exam, call him for an interview. I'm not a great fan of this. There are much more important things wherein we just go by the examination results and we recruit people. So VIVA VOCE has also been criticized as being arbitrary. Some people who had done extremely well in examination have actually not turned up or have not ended up as registered patent agents. And there is also a litigation which actually captures the fact that there are people who do the exam extremely well and still don't make it. So for that and other reasons, I am ideally it would have been better if we don't have a VIVA VOCE, but it's a part of the statute. It's there in the rules, so we can't do much unless there is some kind of an amendment. But so going forward, there are three things that you should be worried about, or three things you should brush up. Okay, these are the three things you are going to brush up. One, your knowledge on patent law, which you would have already done. Now you have cleared the exam, but there's going to be a gap between the exam and the VIVA VOCE. So you will stand good if you can refresh your knowledge, if you can just look at screen share. If you can look at hold on, I just some issue with the settings. Let me just correct that. Yeah, hold on. So there is some we are just facing some issues with the setting. I think it's hopefully I'm just trying to bring this back. Okay, let me just come back to the I may not be able to set this right straight away. So okay, the three things that you need to worry about is, one, you brush up your knowledge on patent law, by which I mean you have to be looking at what you have already done. You'll have to revise some of those things, because the VIVA would normally start off by them checking whether you were the person who took the exam. I mean, for whatever reason, if they want to do that, you have to be sound on what you have already covered, the terrain that you have already covered. This also would mean that you have to now broaden certain aspects of your knowledge, which you would naturally do if you want to continue as an skilled patent agent. Couple of things that are relevant, and I will just mention the context so that you can do the extra reading on that. There is a guideline on biotechnology which you may not have looked into from the perspective of exam, but you can look into it now, because there is, as we speak, there is a decision, or there is a case pending before the Supreme Court where Monsanto is involved, and we could expect a decision most certainly before the VIVA VOCE. That's my hunch. Most likely the decision on biotech patents will be out in the Monsanto case before you have your VIVA. So if it comes, you have to read that decision, and that's going to be a landmark decision, because the last time the Supreme Court gave a decision on a patent case was in 2013. So it's been 5 years, and any Supreme Court decision is the law of the land. So you may have to cover that. So in that context, you may want to look into the biotechnology guidelines, and there are certain patent law principles and practices that are captured there. So that's one thing. Similarly, the computer related invention CRI guidelines, which has been in the making for quite some time. We had a draft a few years ago, then there were multiple variations of that. Finally, we have a draft which came in 2017, and that draft, it would be good for you to look at, because I think it was yesterday, the European guidelines on CRI has come out. And if you're interested, you can have a look at that, because when it comes to computer related inventions, the Indian Patent Office is more likely to follow the European guideline than what is happening in USPTO. So that's another additional thing on patent law which you may want to cover. So first, brush up your knowledge on patent law. Look at the additional guidelines, because these two things are relevant. One, the EPO has revised its guidelines on computer related inventions, and you have a case on biotechnology patents pending before the Supreme Court, and the judgment will be out, so you may have to keep an eye on that, because you could most likely face questions based on that. Okay, so that's the first thing. Brush up your knowledge on patent law. The second thing would be to brush up your knowledge on intellectual property itself. Now, that's something which should be a given for you, because know that it's the Indian Patent Office into which you, if you are admitted, you will be allowed to practice. Now, knowing that there could be questions on copyright, on trademark, on designs, there could be a tricky question to say that may give you a situation and say that which will be the intellectual property right by which you want to protect this. Say they throw in software and they give you a situation, and they will ask you whether you go for what is the kind of protection. You know that software per se is excluded under the Patents Act, but then where do you go for the protection? The protection may lie, if you want to, in the copyright regime. They may ask topography of integrated circuits. That's again one of the things that is excluded in Section 3. But we have a Semiconductor Layout and Designs Act which accommodates that. So you may want to know the scheme of intellectual property rights. And from our end, what we are doing, there is a there is a course of mine on intellectual property from on NPTEL. So if you can trace back, there are some lengthy lectures, but we are trying to create a much more refined version, and it should appear in your when you log in into Lex Campus, it should appear along with the free courses. So we are trying to do that. It may take us some time, but once that's done, that will give you a quick overview of all the IP, which I feel is important. And I've consulted people before, and there is a likelihood that they may question you on general IP. So not just patent law, brush up your knowledge on general IP as well. And we are in the process of creating some course which everybody can access. So you may have to keep looking on Lex Campus so that the course, it will appear in the courses page. So that's the second thing. Brush up your knowledge on IP. The third thing to brush up, and this is it becomes specific because it depends on what your basic degree is, your domain knowledge. So if you are a BE in mechanical engineering or a BSc in zoology, whatever is your basic degree, please brush up the domain knowledge, because we have seen this tendency in a VIVA VOCE. They may ask you what is your background, and if the panel has a person with that background, most likely there could be some questions on that. So again, which could sometimes mean going back to your old texts or the principles of your domain and looking at that, or at least being able to speak up when some question is asked. Okay, that brings me to one thing you should generally be aware of. VIVA VOCE is a time for you to speak up. So ensure that you speak up, take the lead and answer questions, because they will ask some probing questions to understand where you stand on the scheme of things. It always helps when you open up and when you speak up. So I would say that most of the time you should be doing the talking. So bear that in mind, and even if they ask you something which you don't know, you can tell them that I'm not entirely sure of that, but I know something related to it, so that you can carry the conversation. At the end of the day, VIVA VOCE is a conversation they want to have with you to see whether you are the person who is suited for this role. So those are the three things that you should brush up. There are three other things that you should always be concerned about, especially if you plan to make a career as a patent agent. Now, the three things that you should always be concerned about is, number one, be concerned about the evolution of patent law. So this is something which you will always be concerned about, because otherwise you will not be an effective patent agent. Now, I just mentioned there is a case where Section 3J of the Patents Act has been questioned, or rather its applicability has been questioned with regard to biotechnology inventions. Now, 3J deals with plants and animals, whole or part thereof, whether a gene, that is a nucleic acid sequence, would come under this definition is something that the Supreme Court will soon decide. So evolution of patent law means following up patent litigation and knowing how litigation happens, because if you see in the patent agent exam, there are a few sections on infringement, but you would have seen that the patent office is not really concerned on asking that, because when you practice before the patent office, infringement is not what they actually do in a day-to-day basis. So you will find that the patent office is not interested in asking you those questions, but they are definitely interested in asking you how you understand the law. Now, Novartis in 2013, it's a lengthy 100-page decision, you will find various things about the concept of patentability. The court draws a distinction between the concept of patentability and the definition of invention. So this is a comparison between Section 3, the exceptions in Section 3, what it calls the concept of patentability or the standard of patentability, and the definition of invention in Section 2(1)J. And there is a good discussion to say that whether 3D can be seen as a part of the definition of invention, or whether it should be seen solely as a concept of patentability or a standard of patentability. And finally, the court comes to the conclusion to say that regardless of how you look at it, this invention will be barred by 3D. Now, that discussion is important, because once you understand the concept of patentability and the definition of an invention, you will know that these two are two different things. The definition of invention has the three standards: novelty, inventive step, and industrial application, whereas the patentability standard itself in Section 3 and 4, you can add 4 to that, are the excluded things. So which do you apply first? There's a Delhi High Court decision which says that you should apply the exceptions first and then move on to the definition part. So all these things, the principles on application, the principles on how do you determine infringement, is simply not there in the book, in the act and the rules. So that to remain an effective patent agent, you may have to look into those things. So the first thing is you need to keep track of the evolution of patent law, largely through cases litigated, and you need to know about patent litigation. That's point number one. Going forward, not just for the VIVA VOCE, if you have to be an effective patent agent, you need to follow patent litigation. The second thing that you need to follow if you want to become an effective patent agent is to look at patent drafting more seriously. Now, I will just tell you that drafting is probably the easier part of drafting a specification from scratch is the easier part. The difficult part is when the patent office raises some objections on something you have done and you have to file an amendment. So amendment, there is consensus amongst the practitioner, is the tougher part in drafting. So how do you carry out amendments? Now we could probably, if time permits, we will have separate sessions on one session on patent litigation, and if time permits, we will have a session on how to carry amendments in patent drafting, because that's quite tricky. There are some section 59 actually limits what you can do. The scope of the amendment is quite limited, so you can only carry an amendment which narrows down or restricts the scope of the claim, or by way of explanation. So those things are there. So if it's possible, we will do an example for you to show that how an advanced aspect of patent drafting is done. So that's the second thing. You need to know the deeper principles of patent drafting. What you did in your exam was just, there was a couple of questions you answered and you got through, but in practice, the difficulties or the challenges that you face will be much different. The third thing that you should be concerned about to remain an effective patent agent is the fact that you should be looking at patent prosecution more seriously. Now, patent prosecution is the art of overcoming objections that the patent office would raise up until the grant. So the objections can keep coming your way till you get a grant, because drafting and filing is, as I said, they are the easier parts. You file something, sit with the client, get an idea filled, file, make something and put it across. But when the objections come, and they will certainly come, how do you get over it? So there are some strategies that you can use to get over objections, and if possible, we will have a session, that is before you have your VIVA VOCEs coming up, we will have a session on prosecution, patent prosecution as well. We will look at a sample of how, look at questions that are normally raised in an FER, and we will see how that can be answered, or we can look at means by which we can answer that. So that's in brief, that just brings us to what I had to cover about preparing for the VIVA. So just to take you along again, brush up your knowledge about patent law, which would also include the guidelines that I mentioned, because both those guidelines are relevant today, the CRI guidelines and the biotech guidelines. Brush up your general knowledge on IP. There are some free courses that we are planning to offer, so keep looking at our courses page. And also your domain knowledge. That could be specific for each one of you. So whatever you did your graduation in, or your theses, or whatever, if you have a PhD or your master's, the domain knowledge is something which they could question you on. And the three things that you should be looking forward to or should be concerned about as a professional, not just for the VIVA VOCE, but going forward, is to look at patent litigation, look at advanced patent drafting, and look at patent prosecution more seriously. And you should be looking at how you can, this is one of the critical skills a patent agent will require from day one. How effectively can you reply to an FER, a first examination report? Now, what I would suggest, if you have any questions, then I would suggest that you post them on the comment section, and let me see if I'm able to look at that and answer it. So on the comment section, okay. Yeah, so I'm just, you can add a comment if you have or you can use the chat. There is a chat where you can raise your questions. Okay, then what I would suggest, we will just wrap up this session. We will have we will have yeah, there are some questions coming up. Hold on. Okay, question related to WIPO and other convention will be a part of your general IP that you cover, because all the IP laws that we have come from largely from international conventions. So it would help you to know the scheme, because most of you would have already known that from our earlier lectures that the patent law is actually based on the TRIPS agreement, which is a part of WTO. So to that extent, you may have to generally know these things. Um, how long does it last? I've known VIVA OCs that have gone beyond half an hour, lengthy VIVA OCs, but it depends on how, what kind of questions they ask you and how you are able to strike a chord. Now, if you touch upon a controversial subject and somebody in the panel wants to challenge you on that, then your VIVA OC may, I mean, I know you can just check out Lakshmi's podcast on our website, where she actually tells us how she was grilled in her viva. So there is no limit as to what it is, but regardless of what it is, you should be doing most of the talking, because it's an opportunity for people to gauge your ability or whatever they want to gauge, but then they would only know that if you speak up. So you have to be doing much of the talking. Yes, this recording will be available. For what we will do is, we will try, if necessary, we will just try to do some edit and we will load it, but normally this should be available, because there was some, as you see, there was some display issues, but we will try to address that, or this would be available available as soon as it is done. Work experience is not relevant at all. Don't worry about work experience, because if you have work experience in Viva, they may question you about the work if it is IP related, okay? Or they may question you on your domain knowledge, if the domain knowledge is where you ended up doing your work. So with regard to that, that's all is required, because we want freshers to become patent agents as well. People who are in the final year have been taking the exam, so most likely they may not have any experience at all. So that's perfectly fine, whether you have work experience or not. Yes, in Viva OC, they can give you a situation-based question. They can ask anything. So there is no prescribed syllabus. That's why I said brush up your knowledge on 3 broad places on which they can ask you questions. So they could put forward a question and they could ask you that. But you need to refresh what you studied. You've cleared the exam, but you need to refresh whatever you have studied, so that you can answer a question if it is asked. What should a person... Okay, somebody who couldn't clear it this time, you have to look at what you did this time. How much time did you dedicate for studying this? And you can also discuss this with other people who have cleared the exam. In my estimation, I would say that 3 to 6 months of part-time study is required to clear this exam. I mean, there could be people who have done it quicker than that with some background in patent law, but this is what you would do. You would look at least 6 months at a leisurely place. Now, we do not know when the next patent agent exam would be. It could be in May. It's possible if there is a market demand and they see that the filings are improving. You can see that there's quite a lot of push from the government on sensitizing IP and on awareness. There's quite a lot happening. So if the government chooses, there could be an exam in May. So that gives you roughly 4 months or 5 months, depending on when you want to start. So then I would suggest that you should go on a long drawn basis, preparation on a long drawn basis. So weekly you should have an estimate of what you will cover and take some practice tests. You will be in good shape in May. Assume that the examination is not in May, then most likely it will be in October or November again. So which means you have almost a year. So my suggestion will be, look at what didn't work for you. If you didn't clear it this time, then you would certainly know how many hours you dedicated for this, when did you started, what is the material that you used, did you have external support, all these things. Analyze that, compare it with people who were successful. You can even talk to people, and I would suggest that start early. Then let me look at the questions again. Whether you should carry other IP certificates. I'm not sure. When you get the invite for VIVA, they will tell you what you should carry. So I will not jump ahead and offer you what you should be carrying. But if you get an invite letter, that letter should tell you what are the things that you should take with you. Uh, Yeah, Mr. Aslam and Lakshmi's podcasts are already there. We need to get in touch with. These are people whom were my students, so it was easy for me to call them. Most of the people who have cleared the exam, they are in practice, and it's very hard to get them. But let me see. I will ask Venkat and my team here to see whether we can have more podcasts. I know that it's quite useful, so we will try to see whether we are able to do that. Uh, Patent analytics. There's a question on. Let me. Where is it? FTO prior art search devising a search strategy. See, FTO prior art search devising a search strategy is not the core competence of a patent agent. I must tell you that. Now, in the West, the patent search is done by a different set of individuals. Patent search, the people who search the patent for patents are not the attorneys. So there's a clear line between the searchers and the attorneys. In our country, it's all mixed up. But that's not the primary function. The primary function is to create patent specifications and prosecute them, which means when objections come, you reply to them and get a patent granted. That's the primary function. So it may be of some value, but patent analytics, FTO, prior art search, and devising a search strategy is not the core competence of a patent agent. So agent is in a different pedestal. So I would just tell you that the focus should be on drafting, and the focus should be on replying to objections from the patent office. It's a mixed set. The people normally they invite people from practice who have been practicing at the patent office. And it could also be examiners and controllers as well. So the panel is completely left to them. Again, carrying certificates, I would not tell you anything because you have to see the invite letter that you receive and do accordingly. Printed material, I'm not sure because normally VIVA VOCE is an oral examination. They may give you a sheet of paper and ask you to work out something. That's a different story, but it's normally an interview. There are no vacancy for this exam as I understand it, because this is registered patent agents are, in England, for instance, I think you have more than 10,000 registered patent agents for a small country. In our country, we need much more than that. If you see this, the number of people. So if you look at patent agent density, we have a very poor patent agent density because for 1.3 billion people right now, we have close to just 2,000 patent agents, which is by no means can we justify those numbers. So patent agent is not based on vacancy, it's based on the market need. So there's no upper cap as to how many patent agents there can be. If the industry wants it, you're going to have more of them. So it's just like the number of lawyers. There is no upper cap on the number of lawyers who can practice in India in all the courts. I'm not sure about World IP Day. Okay, World IP Day is April 26th, so I don't know. If some general knowledge on IP, maybe they could be. I mean, that's something you will know on your own when you look at the international regime and all that. See, the VIVA, I'm not sure. VIVA is largely like a pass or a fail, in my understanding. There is a mark for VIVA, but you would normally be seen as whether you clear the VIVA or not. I'm not sure about the detail because unlike patent, the paper 1 and 2 where they say you have to get 50% and 60 altogether, the VIVA they are not clear on that. So it should be more like a pass or a fail thing. Yeah, this time I understand that there have been more than 4,800 odd people who took the exam, and they are calling 1,400 odd people for the VIVA. So you can expect the VIVA to be quick, that much I'll tell you, because the numbers are simply not what the patent office has handled so far. So they may ask you a couple of questions, and you can, it may as somebody has asked, they could just ask you a couple of questions and they may wind it up. So that's completely left to the panel. Yes, you must attend the VIVA. I don't think it's optional. It's a part. It's a mandatory part. So even if you have excellent marks, still you need to attend the VIVA. Mark, I've answered that. What should a newbie who knows nothing on patent law do for this exam? The question here is, see, this entire session is on the VIVA. If you want to know about the exam, which is the patent agent exam, the patent agent exam will be conducted whenever they notify, most likely after a year, but there is a possibility they have also conducted the exam in May. So as I answered a question for somebody who raised the question before, you will have to start your preparation on a weekly basis from now on. Expect that to be in May. If you get more time till October, then you can also you'll just get more time to prepare for the exam. So you can look at upcoming courses on the Lex Campus website, lexcampus.in/courses. There are some free courses, and all the courses you can just keep a tag on that. Okay, I'm not sure whether lawyers have any particular advantage. Yes, it could be an advantage with regard to patent litigation. There is that part on understanding case laws. Maybe a lawyer may have some advantage because it's easier for lawyers to know case laws and read them and be up to date on that. There is no, if you look at the I'm just going over the provisions, the rules on patent agent exam. See, they just say VIVA VOCE should be 50 marks. And they say the minimum you have to procure in paper 1 and 2. So this is why I answered. The VIVA VOCE is more like a pass-fail exam. But if you have already scored, we can say that if you have already scored aggregate of 60% of 260, then probably you're clear. And that's the reason why they just ask, somebody asks you, they just ask you one question and they leave you because you have already cleared. I would assume that if out of 250 you need to clear 60 and you already have 60, then VIVA VOCE is just to know that you are the person who took the exam. They just see your face and they clear you off. Yeah, I think that should be the way we should understand this. Conduct training classes. Are you going to? Training classes in Hyderabad on VIVA. See, I've already informed that in 2016 I was going around the country and conducting classes, including Hyderabad. I was there in Hyderabad as well. But I took a call in 2018 that I'm going to use technology, that is YouTube and online classes. So I will not be traveling, and it's not possible for me to travel. You can just see that we have more than 1,000 subscribers now, and from various parts of the country. So we will be having hopefully a few sessions on the details I said. We will be having a session on patent litigation, on advanced patent drafting, and on patent prosecution, how to reply to FERs. Again, by YouTube or by Zoom. So I don't think I will be able to conduct any on-site in any city, including my city. So Chennai, you would have seen that has a very high pass percentage, but even in Chennai, I will not be conducting any on-site classes. It's simply not possible. Given the numbers that we have, it's simply not. There is a question that please connect with us by means of uploading 5 to 10 minute short videos on more frequent basis. Yes. So this is a question that has been repeatedly told to me that because patent agents need continuous patent education, because only then you're going to be. I just mentioned a few days back. I think yesterday the European Patent Office has come up with the new guidelines on CRI, which is quite likely that the Indian Patent Office will follow it, because I've seen the trend in the past years. We are more in line with the European Patent Office when it comes to granting computer-related inventions than with the US or any other patent office. So most likely, if we have another version of the CRI guidelines, it will look like what the EPO has come up with. And EPO's guidelines have been praised universally, kind of. So that's one thing. Then I said Supreme Court is right now. It finished hearing the Monsanto matter last week, a few days ago, and most likely you'll get a judgment the coming week or the week after that. Once that happens, that's Supreme Court pronouncing on Patents Act after 5 years. The earlier one was Novartis case. That's substantial thing, and you need to keep track of that. So one of the things that I had suggested to this big pool of people who want to remain relevant on patent law is some kind of a membership or a fellowship on Lex Campus. And if you are a member or a fellow, then you will get these inputs on a weekly basis so that you can be in touch with what is happening on patent law. So that's one of the things that me and my team have thinking over it. Probably we will soon inform you about that. And especially, I told you there be more than 100 people have cleared the exam who have used Lex Campus, who have paid and used Lex Campus. I should make myself clear. And I really want to ensure that, they not only clear the VIVA VOCE, but they also have a successful career going ahead. So we would be working on something on those lines. Connecting with me personally is, it becomes difficult for me. So I am on LinkedIn. So if you want to message me on LinkedIn, great. I try to reply to all the messages that come to me on LinkedIn. So you can send a personal message on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way you can get in touch with me. By parent didn't reveal marks of each paper. Okay, the marks may come. I'm not sure when they send you the invite for the VIVA VOCE. I'm not sure because the numbers were much higher this time. So I am not sure why they didn't share the marks, but I'm just assuming that you will get to know eventually. I don't think they'll keep away the marks. You will get to know the marks. Then there is a question on people from very attend VIVA. Will there be any? Don't bother too much about English proficiency, but you must speak up. That's all I'm telling you, because you need a functional language to communicate. Because try to look at what would happen if you are registered as a patent agent. You can file patent applications. Now assume that you draft them and you file them online, e-filing. But if there is going to be an objection today, the patent office would also want prosecution to be conducted online by video conferencing. There's a provision for that. Now you may have to appear as a patent agent in a video conference, or even physically go and present yourself in the local patent office, and then you may have to deal with the controllers, most of whom may not be conversant in, or most of whom would be speaking to you in English. So to that extent, the proficiency in English is a requirement. But don't worry about your accent or your fluency. Even if you find it hard to speak English, please speak up, because this is the time they are going to judge you. They are going to ascertain what you are, you as a person. Let me put it that way, not judge you, to ascertain what kind of professional you are, and to see whether your marks can actually be backed by more than what you have demonstrated in the written exam. So it's going to be like a interview where they can test your personality, so to speak. There is some more questions. I'm sorry, some of the questions are not clear, so you may have to rephrase it. There are quite a lot of spelling errors. Yes, we are planning a hands-on session to show you questions raised by the patent office and how you can reply that. And we can even look at the few examples of how patent agents reply to it, and whether they were able to overcome the objection. So you can, and all this is public domain. I mean, you can find instances where FER raised certain objections, the replies filed by the patent agent, and how the objections were overcome and how it resulted in a grant. So my only concern is getting the time for it. If we have the time, we would like to do a hands-on session on how to reply to FERs. Yes, they are likely to ask questions on your technical background, most likely, because if you are based on your domain area, this is something which we had mentioned early on. You can get more details about CRI from the Patent Office website. They have guidelines on CRI, guidelines on biotech. You can download it from the website. If we pass in VIVA, would they mean clear the... Yes. Yes, but see, the total marks, I understand from what some of you have pointed out, you need to score 60% of 250, which is the total marks. So if even without VIVA, if you can do that, great. But then your VIVA is going to be a formality. They just come there, and I don't think they can anyway fail you if you get more than 60%. Yeah. Will there be a live session? Will they? No, we can't answer that question whether it will be stringent or liberal, but everything has been liberal so far. Okay, the examination paper was really easy. Some of you, I know, that got back to me saying I'm getting more than 90 in paper 1, which was not in any of the earlier years. It was not like this. So the paper was very easy, and we have seen that the valuation was easy. So most likely VIVA will also follow that pattern, as I can see. Okay, the last question. Yes, you can. There are people in the past who have taken an RTI to get a copy of their paper. If you want to, you can do that as well. In fact, there is one of our webinars where we showed a paper that was taken on RTI, but that's left to you. I mean, it's something which something which you can claim from the Patent Office. But I would suggest that you wait for the marks, see how the marks are, and then take a call on whether you need to do that. Okay, that brings us to the end of this session. We are slightly short of our mandated time. So please subscribe to this channel so that all notifications on further live sessions I know there are questions being asked, but we'll have to conclude this. We have really short our time. Yeah. Okay, till next time, please stay in touch, and once you subscribe, you'll get the notifications on any live sessions that are going to come in the future. Yeah, thanks for joining. Bye.